why is Deepika depressed? She has everything. She has money. She's fame. She has talent. She's going places. She's, depression is treated as a indulgence. Like, only people who have no real problems are depressed. So when you came out in that conversation and millions of people saw it online, on television, read about it, were you worried that the people were going to be horribly mean? And were some people horribly mean?
No. I don't think anyone was mean, but I didn't even think about it. I didn't think about the repercussions. I think
you didn't have a moment of how will this impact my public image?
No, not at all. I think for me, the idea really was to just change the way people in India and in the world look at mental illness and, give it the respect that it needs. I think the idea really was to just change the conversation because I had experienced like literally a pre and post. And I lived with it for a couple of months without sharing it with anyone. And then today I feel so much lighter and so much better when I've come out and I've spoken about my journey. And I know a lot of other people who do. There's not a single day where I've probably not met someone who has come up to me and said, thank you for sharing the story. But what's also helped them is the fact that they've then shared their story with someone saying, I know what Deepika's been through because I'm going through the exact same thing, and they instantly feel a lot lighter.
What was the toughest thing about that phase of your life? Was it feeling like nobody's going to understand? Was it the sense of losing control? Was it the sense of, surrendering almost? Like you almost have to surrender to it before you can get better. You can't fight it. A lot of people think it's mind over matter, but actually depression is matter of a kind, and I'm going to talk to the doc about it in a second. But what was the toughest thing about that phase of your life?
The phase itself. The phase itself. I think before the intervention, I think before I understood, before my mother saw it, before anyone else saw it, to have to wake up every morning, to drag myself to work, to put on this face like everything's okay, when deep down inside I had no reason why I was where I was and what I was doing. And life just, it felt like there was no purpose. I didn't feel like, it made absolutely no sense. Just life made no sense. So for me, I think that was the toughest part.
And Murli, that can be staggeringly lonely. The thing about depression is this kind of chicken and egg thing, right? You're already feeling like shit inside. You're feeling what Deepika calls that pit in your stomach. And then you feel like if you share it, she was, I think, in a way lucky because she had this really supportive family. She had this broader support structure in terms of a family friend who was a trained counselor, Shyam Bhatt, a wonderful doctor. But most people are embarrassed about being depressed. Most of us are just plain embarrassed because we think we'll be judged.
That's right.
Even though 36% of this country, according to the World Health Organization, is depressed.
Yeah. So it's very well said. And first of all, I commend you on coming out. I think it's a transforming moment in India in terms of mental health and the attitudes, and we need more champions like you. And I can't imagine a better champion than you. So
thank you.
I want to point a few things about statistics that you alluded to. Depression and mental disorders are now the leading cause of disability in the world. And they are soon going to become the #2 cause of death in the next 10 years or so. In India, something like 150 million people have mental disorders, and especially amongst youth. The average age of depression in India is 30. Women are twice as likely to have it as men.
Yeah.
And amongst youth, which is sort of defined as people under the age of 25, I think in the previous session, Karan said that roughly half of India's population is under the age of 25, and our country depends on them for all of the accomplishments it's going to make. There is one suicide every hour in that age bracket, making India maybe one of the leading suicide countries.
Yeah, it is the highest number of suicides
age bracket.
Between 18 and 29.
That's right. And all of the symptoms that Deepika described are classic symptoms of depression. There is an enormous treatment gap. It takes on average between 1 to 2 years for the average person with mental illness to even be sort of recognized that they have the symptoms to seek help. And we have something like a 10 to 30-fold shortage of mental health professionals in this country. So even if somebody recognizes that they need help, it's very hard for someone living in the rural areas or someone who's poor, coming from sort of the marginalized sections of society, to find the right care and treatment.
Can you
So
speak to exactly on that? Can
Yeah.
you speak to why then depression is not treated as seriously as another illness which is more physically identifiable, maybe? Like one of the things that Deepika mentioned was that she resisted medication. Now that is a very, very common response. I mean, I remember I used to get anxiety attacks, and when my doctor told me, you need to go on medication, I said, no, I don't want medications, messing with my brain. Now, this is a standard response, and I was having this response as an educated, aware journalist, right? So what intrigues me about the battle against depression is we are not able to cross that collective psychological barrier where even everybody sitting around me, the first instinct is this happens to other people. Hey, why would I be depressed? This happens to other people.
Yeah. So I think Tipper Gore, Al Gore's wife, suffered from depression, and she described depression as the greatest stigma of the 21st century. There's two elements of that stigma. The stigma of depression is unlike the stigma of any other physical illness. One is there's a self-stigma.
Yeah.
You yourself feel bad and you think it's a weakness. And that sort of almost spreads to others around you, your family and your friends, and they don't want to talk about it, and they kind of hide the problem until they get burnt out themselves, and then you're forced to seek help. So it's a twofold, and depression affects the core of who we are as human beings, our emotions, or just our personality, our cognition, all of that, and that's, I think, explains why the stigma has been so great. And I think things like what Deepika's foundation is doing, education, is really the core of overcoming stigma, especially education at younger age groups. And I think PM Modi, in one of his radio addresses, said, very simple, expression rather than suppression. And I think Deepika, she has done that by talking about it, by spreading the word, by educating people, especially in the youth. That's the key, I think, to overcoming stigma.
I want to come to the science of it in a moment, but I want you to talk a little bit about two things. One, I remember you telling me that at that phase when you slipped into this depression without knowing necessarily that it was depression, you had lost a very close friend. And I remember you told me that, again, you thought, or you didn't know that this friend was depressed. And that if this friend could do this to him, in terms of not thinking his life was worth living, just imagine how many other people around you might be living with that. So can you speak a little bit to how losing that friend maybe, in a sense, began your own journey of self-discovery of what you were going through? I'm not saying that was the cause of your depression.
Yeah.
I'm saying it probably helped you to uncover it.
Well, he was a friend of a friend, and for me, someone I had met socially many, many times. But I think that was when I decided to sort of speak up and to do something about it, because I was seeing so many people around me. Now that's just one instance. We wake up today, we read the papers every single day. There's a headline. And